This morning, we're going to hear from representatives of the Department of Juvenile Justice who are here to discuss the proposed medical services contract and the proposed high acuity juvenile mental health treatment facility. As well, we will hear from the Department of Corrections regarding their medical service contract and any possible impact from the contractor's bankruptcy filing. So with that, I call the meeting to order and ask for a roll call. We need to do roll call.
Senator Storm, Senator Webb, Representative Bray,
Present.
Representative Decker, Representative Kulkarni, Representative Sharp, Senator Mays Bledsoe, Senator McDaniel, Representative Bowling, Representative Elliott, Representative Petrie, Senator Funky Fromeyer, Chair Dietz.
Present. With that, I would ask, first on the agenda is Randy White. If you want to make your way up to the table. And once you're settled, if you want to turn on your microphones and introduce yourself.
Yes, ma'am. My name is Randy White. I'm the Commissioner for the Department of Juvenile Justice. With me is Executive Director of Administrative Services within Juvenile Justice. And to open, what I would request, Chairperson Dietz, is to maybe switch up the order so that the Department of Corrections could go ahead of us, because there's a lot of questions that may be able to be answered with clarity about the medical services contract. And it would flow a lot better because it would fill in some of the gaps if members of the committee have questions.
I'm flexible, so if we want to start that way, that's fine.
Yes, ma'am. I think it'll work better.
Okay.
I think it will inform the committee much better in a sequential order. So thank you.
All right, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
And the same for you all. Good morning. And once you're settled, if you'll turn on your mics, make sure the green button's on and introduce yourself.
Good morning. I'm Hillary Daly. I'm the Deputy Commissioner of Support Services.
Good morning. My name is Nathan Goins. I'm Assistant General Counsel with the Justice and Public Safety Cabinet, Office of Legal Services.
Good morning. And since you all are going out of order, is there a place that you want to start on this with the contracts?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes. The contract with WellPath was awarded via request for proposal.
I'm sorry, is your mic on?
It was a lighter green.
Okay,
I think that's
thank
better.
you.
My apologies. The contract with WellPath was awarded via request for proposal issued by the Finance and Administration Cabinet's Office of Procurement Services in 2021. WellPath, formerly Correct Care Solutions, has been the department's comprehensive medical provider since 2013. As of May 12, 2025, WellPath has successfully emerged from Chapter 11 and completed its financial restructuring process. As part of this emergence, WellPath transitioned ownership to a group of its current and former lenders, the Ad Hoc Lender Group, establishing a strong financial foundation for the company. As part of the reorganization plan, DOC's contract was listed as an automatically assumed contract, meaning WellPath remained the holder of the contract following its emergence from Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Since their bankruptcy filing, WellPath's contractual obligations have continued to be met. There have been no service lapses or impediments to the level of care provided. We'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you. I guess, first of all, when we say they've emerged from bankruptcy, do we mean now that they've been discharged from bankruptcy? I saw the press release, I think, yesterday. I was reviewing that, and I'm like, is emerge also? Are we using that word to mean that they've been discharged?
I'll take this question. So their reorganization plan was confirmed on May 9th, meaning that the bankruptcy judge had deemed it feasible, meaning that they made a determination that post-restructuring, WellPath would be, the plan was feasible. They would have sufficient liquidity and assets to pay their bills and function And additionally, it would be unlikely that they would face another bankruptcy or a restructuring or a liquidation type situation. So emerge just means that confirmation plan has been approved. They're in the process of paying out the debts. They have not substantially consummated the plan, meaning it's not completely over, but they have taken the substantial steps to get through bankruptcy. Organization plan has been approved, and essentially just taking the steps to consummate that plan.
Okay, but not discharged in bankruptcy at this point?
Not yet.
Okay. Thank you for that answer. Was there an impact with the restructuring to any of the debts within Kentucky, to any of the vendors here?
I can't speak to other vendors. If you're speaking specifically to DOC, as Commissioner or Deputy Commissioner has mentioned, there was no impact to them. As far as other creditors, I don't know exactly what impact that would have had on them.
DOC is not aware of any. It has not been brought to our attention, if so.
What assurances has the Kentucky DOC received from WellPath about uninterrupted compliance with healthcare standards during the restructuring process?
Well, we have noticed no lapses in their service. I am not the administrator of the contract, but I can assure you that it is heavily managed by a variety of individuals, and that any lapse or impediment to their service would have been addressed immediately.
But you're not aware of any?
No,
as
no.
we sit here. Okay. Did WellPath reduce or slow services, left positions vacant, or was there a delay in specialty care approvals because of this process?
No, not at all.
And has DOC faced any issues with WellPath failing to pay subcontractors or meet staffing obligations?
Not to my knowledge. Paying their subcontractors would likely not come to our attention.
And you believe that WellPath has paid all their bills to DOC?
Yes.
Can you explain what are the services that the current WellPath contract covers?
It's all medical and mental health services, so it would be medical and mental health clinical staff. Covers all inpatient needs, coordinates hospital admission. It's literally every kind of medical care that you could imagine.
And you don't believe there's going to be any anticipated impacts because of this bankruptcy?
No.
Do you feel that you all are being informed along the way of what's occurring with the bankruptcy? I mean, I know when we were here last time, I read about it in an article on the internet while I was preparing for the meeting, so I was not aware. I don't think anybody else on the committee was aware. So do you all feel like you all are looped in?
Yes.
Okay. And how does that occur? I mean, are you all watching this weekly? Are we watching it monthly? How are we watching it?
The Commissioner and Health Services Division staff meet with WellPath almost weekly, if not more often.
And I know we're going out of order, so I'm going to stop there before I ask questions about WellPath and the high acuity and that potential contract. So I don't know if any other committee members have questions. Okay.
Are you all aware of WellPath owing? She had asked about vendors, but owing any kind of money to hospitals or anything like that?
I am not aware of that.
Okay.
If it was brought to our attention, my apologies for cutting you off.
Fine.
I can guarantee you it would be addressed.
Okay, because one of my concerns would be, going forward, having to come back in and fix some kind of damaged relationships with some of these hospitals if they have to do some kind of treatment off-site. So, okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, I guess now I'd like to know, and I don't know if this will segue into the high acuity and where we're at with that. My understanding is a well path is being considered for that contract purpose, correct?
Oh, I will have to let DJJ
Okay.
answer that.
So maybe we need to bring the other members up? And once you're seated again, if you could introduce yourself.
Thank you. Again, I'm Randy White. I'm the Commissioner for the Department of Juvenile Justice. With me is Executive Director of Administrative Services, Elsie Berger. In the audience, we have Deputy General Counsel Nathan Goins and Administrative Services Executive Director for the Justice and Public Safety Cabinet, Rebecca Norton, if we need to call them and seek their assistance. I appreciate the accommodation. I think some of the gaps, some of the questions has been answered and filled in by the Department of Corrections, who is the contract holder currently for the state with WellPath. I know that on the agenda today, we're going to talk about the high acuity mental health facility and the WellPath contract as well. So where would you like me to begin? And again, thank you for the accommodation of the change up in the order of things. Thank you.
You're welcome. I think it would make the most sense to start with the presentation on the high acuity, and then we can fill in those gaps at the end with WellPath, if that's okay.
Yes, ma'am. So in advance of this meeting today, we have sent some PowerPoints with information on the concept design for the high acuity mental health facility. We in the DJJ and the Justice and Public Safety Cabinet, we still believe that we are in high need of a high acuity mental health facility. I hope members of the committee has had the opportunity to review the PowerPoints that we've sent. A couple of years ago, we initiated a preliminary study, and I can defer to my colleague Elsie Berger to go more in depth with the information and the details, but we initiated an internally funded preliminary study for a high acuity mental health facility. That started us down the path on a design and a conceptualization for such a facility. Mr. Berger, is there any additional details that you want to add before we open it up to questions?
Just that we have not completed the design phase. This was, the specific term was preliminary programming and design report. We funded that ourselves. We were directed to look into that. And so that has produced the report and then as well the PowerPoint that we sent to you. But just to be clear, it has not went through the budget process for design. We did submit it in the capital plan earlier this month, or at the end of last month.
So we're prepared to answer some questions about design concept, and I guess maybe at this time I can open up for any questions about the high acuity facility. We're still seeking funding for design and scope, and then of course ultimately construction of such a facility. So are there any questions, or what would you like to know about it?
Yeah, I think I'd like to go back and where are we exactly with the design phase?
We have not been funded for design, so
Okay.
we actually haven't entered into A, B, or C, the A, B, or C process with DECA. So we submitted in the capital plan this year to enter into that process, and so if that is accepted by the General Assembly, we would seek design funding and potentially funding for the other phases, potentially within the biennium. But we're not yet at that official design phase. So these are preliminary steps to kind of conceptualize what it would look like, but I think that's some of the trouble we have sometimes is with some of the very specific questions is we haven't went through the full design phase to narrow down some of the more specific questions as far as physical plant through that issue. But all the information that we have has been submitted in the capital plan for that.
On the last page of your slide, you've outlined, I think, what your estimated costs are.
Yes.
Okay. Can you walk us through those estimated costs?
Hold on one second. Rebecca, do you want to Can you assist with this? I'm going to ask Rebecca Norton to assist with this portion. Last slide.
Rebecca, it's queued up if you want to pull it up.
Oh, is it queued on the benefit? Oh, got it. There it is.
Okay. I'm Rebecca Norton. I'm the budget director for the Justice and Public Safety Cabinet. Hopefully this will help so you don't have to listen to me just read numbers to you, having that visual up there. So this is just a preliminary cost estimate, and that's really just based on initial programming and discussion that's been had. I think I would compare this to kind of a cost estimate or just a preliminary investigation into this construction project. As Elsie mentioned, we don't have full funding for a design phase, so this isn't a full phase A design as what you would maybe normally think of as that preliminary step in design. So the costs that are listed here are based on discussions that have been had as far as what would be requirements for square footage, and that's based on number of beds. Those discussions are based on kind of what DJJ's needs are as far as number of youth that would need to be in the facility, as well as clinical requirements and detention security requirements.
And who's present during these discussions? I mean, where's the information coming from?
The information. So we've had discussions with CHFS to kind of get their perspective because obviously they operate the PRTF facilities. And then we've had discussions with the medical and mental health staff that are at DJJ as well. But the design team that helped us put this together, they also have a pretty strong background in justice-related design, and they've also pulled in some experts who have a background in medical clinical facilities, as well as some similar detention, secure type facilities for medical and mental health treatment throughout the country.
And can you remind us what the number of beds that this facility will be?
So it is, and we talk about it in sort of a split sense. It's 24 total, but it is 16 beds that would be considered clinical, and that's to meet those clinical and statutory requirements to be a PRTF facility. And then it would be 8 beds that are in the same facility but separated in a way that it allows us to maintain those clinical certifications. And the 8 beds are considered sort of an assessment and stabilization unit because when we started having discussions with DJJ as well as some of the CHFS staff, it was noted that a lot of the times when these kids come in, and I'm not the best person to describe this, but when they come in, you really need a chance to assess where they're at. They may not have a diagnosis at that point, but it may be something that staff sort of suspects that there could be something going on, and so they need that opportunity to be assessed by medical and mental health professionals. It may be that they don't have a diagnosis and they just need that time to stabilize after coming into the detention facilities, and then they might be able to assimilate into one of our other detention facilities without needing clinical treatment. But that's why when you look at these slides and it discusses a 16 and an 8, that's where that split is coming from.
So I believe that we're aware that maybe the cabinet's also going to be asking for a facility. Haven't seen anything formal. Are you all, is this going to be a shared facility, an add-on to it, or are they going to be asking, are you aware, are they going to be asking for a different?
We're aware. My understanding is that the difference would be that if we had youth in our facility that were involved with DCBS as well, that they would be dually committed. So our facility would be specifically for justice-involved youth. They could have that dual commitment, but they have to be in DJJ's sort of purview of care. Whereas the facility that CHFS is requesting, our understanding is that is for youth who are not justice involved.
So it will be 2 different facilities?
Yes.
With this, can you tell us what's happening with these children now?
So currently, there's no law in Kentucky that requires private health care to treat violent individuals. And going back to the previous question, it would be very important to keep non-justice involved individuals separate from justice involved individuals. There's different pathologies for safety, for treatment purposes. So currently, we have to look for beds often out of state, and I've been asked about the number of juveniles that we've sent out of state, and most recently I know of one definite person that was sent to Pennsylvania, but prior states we've had to consider placement and bed space in Arkansas, Georgia. What's the others, Elsie? We discussed these states.
Texas, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, as Commissioner Pierce mentioned.
So when we require or we seek placement of these violent individuals, if we're fortunate enough to obtain a bed and position and treatment for these individuals, we have to send them far away from their support base, far away from their homes. It could be somewhat traumatic for them to move that distance. In addition, these states need their beds of their own, and so we're trying to stand in line. And unfortunately, often it delays treatment for the individuals that need treatment. And honestly, we have to keep them in a detention setting, which is not favorable or conducive for treatment.
Do you know how many youths do we have now that would qualify for a high acuity facility?
I would have to consult and get back with you. I know that currently we do have one individual that is progressing in treatment in Pennsylvania, but I'd have to consult with their mental health and get an exact number, and I can provide that to you very, very soon.
And I'm just asking, so you have one right now, but we're asking that the facility be built. So do you believe that we have that many youths that would qualify under the criteria for this type of facility?
When we accept and we're charged with the mission for detention, we see surges. You never know. You never fully know. In a correctional setting where folks are convicted and committed, often it's more predictable. You can keep those beds full. Within our system, we see surges. We may go through 5 or 10, or we may see 1 or 2, but it's important to understand that when we request a high acuity mental health facility, what we're looking at is the degrees of separation between high and low risk and males and females. So we have to have flexibility, and it's not necessarily going to involve filling 24 or 18 beds consistently. We have to have the degrees of separation operationally to make sure that they're safe. But I can get you an exact number. But we do have individuals right now that could be placed in a high acuity facility. And again, we have to consider the surges in the population.
And I guess along those lines, what we just saw on that last slide is the cost to build, not the cost to maintain and staff. So I think you did this last session for us, but what is the estimate to staff?
I can refer to Ms. Norton to talk about the estimate for the operational budget from year to year. But how we arrived at that budget is we took a look at 2 things. Number one is what would be the operational cost for a female facility, which is slightly more staff intensive, for a number of offenders, juvenile offenders, and that type of setting. In addition, on top of that, treatment needs for that type of facility.
The slide that's in front of you, it references that same sort of cost estimate thought process where those numbers that are in black are, I think, a very good estimate of what just running a typical detention type facility of this size would cost. The unknown number is that number in orange, which is that medical contract. And that's one of those things where as we developed this, we would be able to better determine what that number would be. I think it's anticipated right now that the clinical part of this operation, those clinical staff, would be a part of a medical contract, whether that would be part of the larger medical contract or something that is separate and specific to this facility. We don't know yet. So that's why we've plugged in that number there. But that could change greatly as we get closer to determining what this facility would really look like and how it would operate.
And just trying to wrap my arms around when I hear that we have one youth right now possibly, and you're not sure that would qualify for this, and we've got staffing costs of $12 million. That's where I'm trying to, and then I just heard another, males and females. So would it house males and females?
It would. And so when we're thinking about our requirements under the previously passed Senate Bill 162 from the 23 session, we do have to separate males, females, as well as high and low offenders. So you have to be able to somehow in this facility at least have those 4 divisions created within it. So that's part of it, is that you want to be able to subdivide those spaces. And I will just add, I don't know that I'm the best person to discuss this. I think we do have some our mental health experts in the room, so they'd probably be much better able to give you more information on youth that would benefit from this facility. My understanding from being in these meetings on programming is that it would be, while we might have one youth that we are to the point where we are looking for maybe an out-of-state placement for them right now, that there are a multitude of youth within the juvenile justice system who do have mental health related diagnoses that would benefit from being in a space that is not your typical detention facility, even from the perspective of just they may have a really disruptive I think we've discussed bipolar disorder and other mental health related disorders where it may be manageable at this point because that's really our only option, is to keep them in those detention facilities, but it's not ideal for that youth to be in those detention facilities with the diagnoses that they have.
And I've got other questions, but I want to open it up. Representative Bowling.
Thank you, Madam Chair. How many youth per year currently do we send out of state for care?
So right now we have 1 out of state. In the recent history, that number is usually between 1 and 5. Most of that is related to bed space in other states, though. So we used to go to Georgia a lot. We used to go to Arkansas a lot, but now we're getting turned down for those spaces. They have their own issues there, and in some cases, they don't accept our youth. One of our most recent youth we sent to Michigan, assaulted staff within the first 24 hours and was shipped back. And so it's some of the issues that they have lead to the placement facilities deciding that it's kind of the risk to staff is not necessarily worth the placement. So they're not all dried up, but it is more difficult to place out of state.
Okay.
As Representative Bowling, just to throw in, through some of my experience in watching the population and the treatment needs within our population, we can often stabilize individuals in detention, but it takes much longer, and it's a much worse experience for the juvenile until we can figure out what's going on with them. And it's not a centralized treatment. The doctors have to travel to the facilities, and they have to interact with the juvenile in a volatile situation. If they're in a high-risk facility, the pathology of the high-risk offenders affects the treatment, so it often delays it. We may have individuals that right now currently don't need placement out of state, but they did need to be placed in a high acuity facility, and it took a number of months to get them stabilized in the environments they're in. We could significantly enhance treatment for these individuals if we had that facility.
Thank you. What do we have a line item, the total amount we spend per year sending youth out of state for these services?
We can get that back to you, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Representative Bray.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we send 1 to 5 kids out of state every year. How many youth within the system now do you think could utilize this facility per year?
I think I would have to consult with their mental health staff and to get their opinion on what those are. I don't have that number with me today, but I can certainly get that number for you, and it changes on a daily and a weekly basis because we also, part of our mission is to accept youth from all 120 counties. We will see surges. Most recently, we've seen significant surges with the female population. But I can get that number for you, but it's going to change daily and weekly.
I can add also that the 16 and 8 concept was developed by having discussions with the mental health staff at DJJ as well as CHFS. So it's not just a number that we pulled out of the air because we thought 24 beds would be great. I think we would love for this to be, a smaller facility or a less costly facility, but that number was really honed in on by talking to those staff. I think the staff does a great job doing the best that they can, trying to stabilize in the facilities themselves. But the suggestion for this facility also initially came from the original assessment that we did of all of the detention facilities, and that piece was funded by the legislature in the 23 session. And that's where we looked at each facility to determine what the needs are and how we could accommodate those separations. One of the things that was noted was that there really was a need to be able to pull mental health treatment out of those facilities, because to build up those spaces in every single detention facility that we have would be more costly than building a separate facility that stands alone. And so right now, to maintain those separations, we're keeping, our male population separated between high and low at facilities because we just don't have the space available. We'd have even less space available, I think, if we were trying to build out and accommodate mental health treatment spaces in each of the 8 facilities. So this recommendation came from that facility-wide assessment of that by pulling this out and centralizing your mental health and medical care, you're really helping the staff at each of those detention facilities to better be able to manage the population that they have, and also doing some space saving and cost saving efforts. Because if we weren't suggesting this facility, we would probably be suggesting some renovations to each of the other current facilities to add in a more robust mental health and clinical space where we could separate youth that are struggling in the detention setting.
In a treatment environment, I'm prepared to, for the sake of time, if we have the time, I can go through a simple explanation of what a treatment facility would look like and the complexities. It's not just a matter of warehousing or providing a living space for these individuals. If you will, I can just go through a list very quickly, and it may help fill in the picture of what a treatment facility would look like.
Well, I guess what I'm confused about is if we send 1 to 5, like if we can't currently accommodate 1 to 5 of these youth within what we already have, and we send those out of state, that's about $2.5 million per patient whenever we look at the operating cost of what you all are proposing. And then even at full capacity, if some, you fill up all 24 beds, that's about $500,000 per person. And I would be very curious to see what the contract rate out of state is, because if that can be accommodated some other way, it seems like the numbers are just a little off, just from where I'm sitting.
Operationally speaking, looking at some of the behaviors and some of the incidents from individuals that could have used placement in housing and services in a treatment facility. One particular individual that comes to mind, there was 5 staff assaults until we could get that individual stabilized and figure out the medication needs. And that individual took quite a bit more time and attention of the staff members. Their pathology, their demeanor was affected externally by other individuals in that setting, and it was a very volatile setting. And I feel that that's compounded around the state within our facilities. If we could get them into a treatment facility where the staff are focused, the environment is conducive to treatment, and that the staff know how to, and they're trained how to deal and to manage with these types of offenders, it would be a lot safer for staff and the offenders as well, the juveniles as well. It's just very fragmented now. We do the best that we can with the methods that we have, but it could be significantly improved within the Commonwealth.
And what I haven't heard is I don't think that there's a disagreement or a concern that we want to treat these. It's the cost of that, and I agree with Representative Bray. I mean, if we've got one person now out of state, what's that cost versus building the facility, not just building the facility, but the ongoing cost of maintaining it and staffing it. I'm curious, do we have any excuse me, examples of other high acuity facilities outside of the Commonwealth?
Yes, ma'am. We have collaborated with South Carolina. Kentucky was looking at perhaps being the first state that would have such a facility for juveniles. But we've collaborated with South Carolina, and they're currently in the process of constructing such a facility.
And is it similar size, same number of beds?
Yes, ma'am, very similar. We have their plans, their PowerPoints through the collaboration. I've been in discussion with their commissioner in South Carolina, and it's very, very similar. Although the laws and the regulations are different in South Carolina, it is very similar to our conceptualization of our needs and what we want in Kentucky.
And how far along are they in their process? Is it built? Is it staffed?
I'd have to double check and circle back around, but they're in the process right now. It is an active process, and it's an approved process. But I'd have to double back around and talk with that commissioner and find out where they are.
I'd like to have that information to see where they are in their process and maybe costs,
Yes, ma'am.
both for them to build and to staff. And you mentioned, one of the two of you said something about we could just renovate. Was that something that you all looked at as the cost of renovating some of the facilities that we have? And if you did, what was that cost?
Certainly a facility of this type should be located near a major metropolitan area for obvious reasons, for attracting the qualified staff members that we would want to work in that facility. So that kind of narrows down areas that we would want to renovate. And obviously the major metropolitan areas that we have real estate, we have acreage in proximity to is Lexington and Louisville. I couldn't say for sure where this facility would be located. That would have to come through the design phase and the conceptualization. But often to renovate a facility, it costs more to renovate it and to get it where you want it to be. As far as incidentals and demolition and reconstruction, it's often better just to start from scratch. But we do have the acreage available to locate a facility, so that we wouldn't have to incur the cost of location and the acreage.
And I should add that when I say renovation, I should have really said expansion, because these facilities are pretty much maxed out, I would say, space-wise, as they are right now. To be able to accommodate, as you know, to be able to accommodate the separation between high and low level. We are in the process of doing renovations to McCracken, Fayette County, and Breathitt, and that is to add additional beds and space so that we can have adequate separation in those. For example, to add 2 pods in McCracken in that facility and kind of rework the layout a bit to make it more feasible to have those separations. That project was funded at $11 million. So to renovate all of the facilities, assuming that they could all be expanded, which in some cases it's not possible because of just how they're located on the land and the amount of space that's available on those plots, I think you would be spending much more than doing an individual facility. And I believe that's the assessment that South Carolina made as well, that they really needed this separate space away from their other detention facilities to be able to house these youth. So, and I did put this up here to try to answer one of your previous questions that you had, where we just were discussing, is there a case that you can think of? And I think Elsie has mentioned this as well, that, there are cases where we are able to place youth out of state, but I think what we've run into and what other states are running into is that there's no requirement for private facilities to accept these youth, so we can't place them. And in this case, this example, we tried 9 different times to place a youth in a private treatment facility, and it was not possible. So to compare the cost between sending a youth out of state versus keeping them in Kentucky is important, but maybe also the factor, I would ask you to keep in mind the factor of we often can't place the youth out of state. There is no place for them to go aside from our detention facilities. So we're trying our best to have an option that will be helpful for them and provide them treatment that doesn't currently exist.
Are there any other questions about the facility itself? Oh, Representative Elliott.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just thinking ahead, if we were to construct this facility, do you think that other states would potentially send their high acuity youth who are in mental health crisis to Kentucky, and would that be a possibility to offset some of the costs I know that you've addressed?
I don't think we've not had internal discussions. Obviously, we want to know what the situation is going to be for our own bed space needs, and we would have to consult with our attorneys and legal representatives to, I guess, assess the legalities of that. I'm sure they could be overcome, but again, we've not had internal discussions regarding accepting out-of-state youth.
Other states are doing it, obviously, because we're sending our youth out of state, so that wouldn't be totally off the wall. Would there be a need for it, in your experience, with
I believe
with
these
the
youth
states
are going,
around us?
Yes, sir. Sorry to cut you off, Representative. I believe these youth are going to private healthcare facilities, and this would be a state-operated facility. We would just have to get to that point to see what the bed space looked like, and review the legal challenges associated with that. But we've not had preliminary discussions accepting out-of-state youth. I'm sure there would be a need. I'm sure there would be a robust need. And from my experience with juvenile justice and collaborating with the commissioners around the country, and I do that about every 6 months of meetings, is that every state seems to be a little bit different. It's not a cookie cutter approach. Some states manage detention, some do not. Some have day treatment that's modeled after a Kentucky day treatment. Other states do not. Often the municipalities manage their juvenile offenders for detention needs. So it's really difficult to say what the needs would be at this point.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Just wanted to follow up on Representative Elliott's comment and your answer. So are you saying the one youth that we have out of state right now is at a private facility, and that's where you've placed them?
Yes. It's specializes in sexual offenders.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on the facility? Which then I think circles back to the contract with WellPath, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And I don't know if you have a presentation on that, or you want to bring us up to speed on where you all are at with that with WellPath.
Yes, I'd love to, and we have some positive progress to report on, and I've got some talking points and anticipated questions, and so I'll just jump right into it and go through the talking points. The medical services contract is expected to become effective during July of 2025, so that's just around the corner. As anticipated and outlined in statute, since the contract is not finalized, we are limited in details what we can discuss regarding the ongoing process. So I'll try to give you as much information as I can and legally what I can disclose. DJJ is negotiating with WellPath to ensure that the allocated funding is wisely and efficiently used, and that we maximize the benefit of the funding. Site visits and assessments are complete between WellPath and Juvenile Justice, and these were conducted in order to better target a scope of services. DJJ determined that the current DOC contract provider is the most appropriate and effective option for provision of medical services, and we are in the process of requesting a modification to the current contract between the Commonwealth and the provider to establish a contract with DJJ. All current DJJ merit staff will be retained and unaffected by the implementation of any contract with WellPath. If a merit staff member leaves DJJ, then we would evaluate whether that position should remain merit or be considered for inclusion within the contract. Additionally, DJJ employs 4 nurse program administrators that are state staff members who currently oversee the medical program and ensure compliance with all applicable standards. These positions currently provide oversight and ensure contract compliance and will continue to do so under the new contract model. I anticipate some questions, and I have a bullet list of questions, and I can just roll through those and kind of give you I'll give you a list of what I anticipate those questions will be. Scope of services, specific services that are not included as part of this contract, the base contract amount, does a contract address necessary staffing, and then finally, what will be different from the contract practice once in place. So the scope of services would include, as my colleague in corrections mentioned, holistic medical care and medical needs of juveniles. The contract includes all provisions outlined in House Bill 6, 2024 session, in addition to adding X-ray services, vision, and mental health. Specific services not included, but we already have existing contracts for, is dental, which is provided by Mid-America, and pharmacy, which is provided by Diamond Pharmacy. And to date, those two agencies have met the tenets of their contracts fully. The base contract amount for fiscal year 2026, we had $20 million allocated for the overall contract. I will defer to Executive Director Berger, who has been intricately involved in the process, to talk about the staffing and whether this contract addresses the staffing needs of juvenile justice.
Yes, and so in general, it does address the staffing needs. It'll be a goods and services contract, so they'll provide us both goods, medical equipment that we need, and a management function related to that, as well as they'll provide staffing services. So for all the positions that we have in our facilities, as well as in our central office and our other locations, for the merit positions that exist, those will remain and not be included in the initial staffing plan, but as those positions move over time, we'll then evaluate those. They've already done site visits. We've already talked through the basic staffing plan. The portion we're in now is the final negotiation of specific positions at specific locations and specific services, and then the pricing effect for that. We have one more major meeting that will help us put the final definition on the scope, and then we'll start to transmit the document and negotiate the pricing. But for all the staff services that are currently existing, they'll be able to assume all those roles as well as expand into other areas that we currently do not have a medical services contract for.
So the last question anticipated is what will be different from the current practice in DJJ once the contract is in place? Optometry services, as I spoke about earlier, would be included in this contract. X-ray services, and I think what WellPath offers currently is mobile X-ray, so that we don't have to transfer offenders into the community. If we have a need for that, they can bring the X-ray to the facility, which is much safer and convenient. Mental health services, so we would work with WellPath to implement mental health services and providers within our agency. An added benefit is equipment cost and associated equipment maintenance cost. WellPath, they take care of their own equipment and they fund their own equipment. And they would provide administrative and support services as part of that contract. The Department of Juvenile Justice looks to broaden and augment the delivery of comprehensive and medical and mental health care services through a contractual provider with the added benefits of a healthcare-focused correctional management infrastructure. We believe, and what we're looking for is attracting a provider with specific experience in correctional industry healthcare. Because the healthcare in the correctional industry, it's a little different than what would be available or what the needs are in the private sector. Collaborative partnership to sustain best industry practices in a correctional healthcare on a national level. So there, in looking at having a contract provider, obviously they have to be competitive. They have to stay abreast of current trends, current practices, and we would look for that competitive edge in the delivery of services within our own agency. Staff and stability via a marketable and competitive salary rates and benefits. And then finally, professional and proactive recruiting. We just don't want to hire anybody that walks through the door, and we don't want to tolerate hiring anybody that walks through the door. What we're looking for is a contractual provider that is looking to hire career employees, and that they monitor the fidelity and the services delivered of those career employees. And obviously, we would want to ensure contract compliance once a contractor is on the ground providing these services, so that's of a particular interest of mine for my office going into this process. I think that that concludes our presentation and talking points for the medical services contract. And we'd be happy to try to answer any questions. In anticipation of the questions, I just want to say that I appreciate the support. It's really important, and it means a lot to have your support in working through this process and asking these questions. So thank you in advance for that. Usually one might be nervous to appear today, but I'm happy to be here to work through our elected representatives to continue working this issue.
Thank you, and thank you for being here. And I do think we have a few questions left. Representative Bowling.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Real quick, you have your scope of services currently that WellPath has been providing, and then you have a separate dental contract.
So we're, just for clarification, we're not yet on contract with WellPath. We're negotiating with WellPath currently.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
But then, in addition to that, that contract, you have a separate contract to cover dental services.
Yes, sir.
And a separate contract to cover pharmacy.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is that the way things have always been done? From my understanding, there's some providers that may, provide a more holistic everything. And are there any savings if we were to go to that or to look at that?
Yes, sir. So the way it's set up in the DOC contract, that same framework is essentially what we're adopting. And so the only services that would be provided from from a medical perspective would be the dental and the pharmacy outside, because those are more specializations that WellPath doesn't provide. So everything else will be rolled into that, and we anticipate that we have an allocation of $20 million. We're not sure what the pricing will come back in, but WellPath understands our needs, and they understand our budget and a willingness to work with us. And so we're confident that we can make it work within the allocated funding, sir.
Okay. So you all are just kind of mirroring what they do in other facilities on the DOC level?
Yes, sir. There are differences, obviously, but in general, the existing contract has the existing scope that we need. All we're doing is going in and fine-tuning the portions that are different from DOC and aligning those to the Department of Juvenile Justice.
Mm-hmm.
The unique part of juvenile justice is that we have detention. We have the jails or detention for the juvenile population and the needs within, servicing 120 counties. So there's some unique differences in treatment needs, but we're trying to get on target with that, sir.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Representative Bray.
Have you all submitted a RFP or RFI for before you started negotiating with WellPath? How did that come about?
No, sir. We did not do the RFP or the RFI module. We went through the corrections. We had several meetings with Department of Corrections. We went through their contract. We identified that their contract had the existing scope that we needed, and we requested permission from the Department of Corrections and the Finance Administration Cabinet to enter into conversations with WellPath, and so we're continuing on that path right now. We're not yet on contract with them, but we are negotiating towards a contract. And since it's an existing state contract, we do not need to go through the RFP process.
I mean, I realize you don't have to. I'm just curious, as we've got this company that's going bankrupt. We're a little bit worried about it up here, like what this looks like in the future. It seems like this would be a good opportunity to maybe explore more options, or are you all just that comfortable that WellPath, this bankruptcy thing, isn't a big deal and things will be all right?
I'd have to say with the bankruptcy, I don't think I'm qualified or we're qualified to talk about the tenets of the bankruptcy and all that, and I would be remiss to do that. I would have to defer to the Finance and Administration Cabinet. What I know from my colleagues with WellPath, and I've talked with my colleagues in the Department of Corrections, is that WellPath has not there's been no degradation, there's been no failure to provide the full scope of services and to meet their contractual obligations through this process, because I think I heard about the bankruptcy on the radio or the newspaper or the internet the day after it was filed, and I immediately had questions. So going forward, I was concerned, okay, are they going to meet the contractual obligations? How is it going to affect our intent? How is it going to affect the care of the offenders within corrections? And to date, within Kentucky, to my knowledge, it's not had any kind of effect on the scope of services. and the delivery of services provided to the offenders. But again, on the tenets of the bankruptcy, I'd be remiss to try to comment on that. But I was on the ground as a prison warden and worked with WellPath since the implementation of the contract, and I think that was 2014 or 2015, up until my retirement last year from the Department of Corrections. And from my perspective, they never failed to meet their contractual obligations.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Representative Bowling.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And following up on that point, do you all have concern moving forward on that very piece? I know you said that currently they've not failed to meet their obligations. However, with any bankruptcy, you've got a list of creditors out there and people you owe money to, and depending on how that shakes out, if folks that they are currently utilizing throughout the state to provide those services somehow don't end up, coming out good on this thing, what will that look like as this thing shakes out? Have y'all had those conversations internally, and is that something that you've considered?
Well, again, Representative Bowling, from our experience and my experience and questioning our colleagues in the Department of Corrections, and I think they testified earlier, WellPath has, to our knowledge, has not failed to pay bills, or they've not failed to pay bills and for services. And as they testified, there's been no lapse in services. I would not want to surmise on the bankruptcy and the tenets of that. I'm far from being, qualified to speak about that. But we were watching very carefully to determine whether or not they would fulfill their contractual obligations. To date, they have not failed to meet their contractual obligations. If they were failing, or they had failed to meet any part of their contractual obligations, I would have been concerned and would have been interested in discussing a different route. But things could change tomorrow. They could change next week. But so far they haven't. So that's where I'm at.
Good deal.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Madam Chair.
To follow up on that, again, you can see the bankruptcy is a big concern for us. I'm curious, when you decided not to do an RFP and look at the existing contract and expand those services, was that before they filed for bankruptcy or after?
I believe that it was we began discussions with WellPath before they filed the bankruptcy.
And then after they filed, was there any discussion of a plan B, of maybe we should look at other options?
There was internal discussions dependent upon whether they would meet their contractual obligations or if there was any type of interruption of services. Because obviously it's a priority for us to care for the offenders, whether on the adult side or the juvenile side. So far, we've not seen any indications that would suggest that they're not meeting their contractual obligations. Yes,
Right.
ma'am.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. If not, I'll thank you all for coming today. Appreciate your time. And with that, we're adjourned.
Thank you.